In this video I'm gonna show you how I made this axe completely by hand. That means no power hammer, no forge press, no grinder, and I'm also giving it away.
So I'm starting out with a bar of mild steel, roughly 12 by 40 by 200 millimeters, and I start the process by dividing the bar into separate sections for the different parts of the axe. The 20 millimeter section in the middle of the piece will become the pole or the neck of the axe. The two sections on each side of the pole are going to become the eye of the axe, and the outer sections on each side will become the blade of the axe. I mark with my center punch where the blade section begins on each side of the bar. I then flip the bar and mark the area where the pole or neck will go. The idea is that I will use these markings as a guide for making set downs on the edge of the anvil. I line the two markings up against the edge of the anvil and I carefully start forging my set downs. I then flip it over and do the same thing to establish the pole of the axe. After one side is done, I turn the bar and start working from the other side, doing the exact same thing. After the set downs are established, I use the peen section of my hammer to draw out the lugs or ears of the axe. And here I am very careful not to distort the already established set downs while I draw out the lugs. I then flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Once the lugs are drawn out, I begin shaping them on the horn of my anvil. And I once again flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. I finish the eye and the pole section off by using my flatter to smooth everything out. Before I start folding the axe, I take a few extra heats to spread and draw out the blade section of the axe. This will make things easier later when we insert the edge steel. I then roughly measure to see that both sides are somewhat similar.
Alright, so the preform is now completed and it's time to fold it to make it an axe, basically. And what we're going to do is that we're going to forge weld it shut, but we're only going to focus on the section closest to the eye here, because I want to focus there first, give it all my attention so that I can really close that up and make it strong, because that's usually the weakest point of these kinds of axes. So I'm not going to forge weld the ends here, because we're going to split that up anyways to insert the edge steel later on. So it's time to heat up the forge. We're going to clean off the surfaces a little bit with a hot rasp, and then it's time to fold it.
I apply some flux to keep the surface from forming forge scale, which is something you don't want in your welds. I then begin folding the axe, and if I did a good job in the preform, it should line up relatively even. Another little trick is to insert a small thin piece of high carbon steel at the eye section. Since high carbon steel generally have a lower welding temperature than mild steel, it helps fusing the two sides slightly, in my opinion. I then heat everything up to a white-yellow color and start forge welding the axe. I repeat this process a few times until I'm sure that it is welded. I also make sure to blend the welds on the profile of the axe. I find that the peen section does a good job at that. Once it's welded, I start prepping the edge steel, and in this case it's a piece of SS2090 spring steel. I basically draw it out into a wedge shape. I cut off the excess material and use my rasp to clean the edges and remove any forge scale. I then open the blade up carefully and brush it as clean as I can before inserting the edge steel. Once the edge steel is inserted, I put it back in the forge and I once again heat it up to a white-yellow color before welding it all together. When the welds are set, I start shaping the axe to the design I have in mind. I noticed that I have a bit too much material, so I use a chisel to cut it off. Once I am happy with the blade section, I turn the axe around and start working on the eye section. I carefully insert the drift, not to make the eye larger, but to shape it. When drifting, tremendous stress is put on the weld in front of the eye, so if it holds up, you did a good job welding the eye.
Alright, so we're now done with the forging and it's time to clean up the profile a little bit and establish the edge. And since we're doing this completely by hand, we're going to use a file.
When filing the edge, I like to start out with a steep edge just to line everything up. I then work my way back to smooth everything out. Chances are that the axe will outlive me, so I stamp it with my maker's mark so that the owners can know who made it and where it's from. I like to think of normalization as a spa treatment for the axe. It basically reduces the stress in the metal, making it less prone to cracking in the quench. I carefully heat the edge of the axe and then I quench it in oil to make it hard. To temper the axe, you could stick it back in the fire and look for temper colors appearing, or you could put it in a regular oven. Remember to inform your wife or husband before putting an oily axe in the oven though, just a precaution. To test the hardness of the blade, I use my Japanese Rockwell files. It gives you a rough idea how hard the edge is. If the file bites, it's softer than the file. If it skates, it's harder. In this case, it seems to be around 55 Rockwell. To sharpen the axe, I use a very hard and fine file, and I carefully file the edge until I can feel the burr established on the edge. I then move over to using sandpaper to make it even finer. Finally, I use a piece of leather with polishing compound to strop the edge, making it relatively sharp.
Alright, so we're now at the stage where the axe head is actually completed and it's time to hang it on a handle. And just like the previous videos in this series, we're going to use store-bought handles or something like that, because we're going to look into making your own handle in a future video, so we're going to save that information for that. So I'm using an old unfinished handle, and the way I like to do it is that I like to seat the head on top here, give it a few hits on the back, remove the handle, and then we will see where we have contact, because the wood will be darker there in those spots. Then I just simply remove material in those spots, continue until I have the axe at a position of my liking and there's contact all around the axe. That means that it's going to be tight and ready for hanging.
I use a saw to cut the slot for the wedges. On this axe I chose to make what is commonly known as a cross wedge. It basically pushes the material in all directions. We will look into that in more detail in a future video. I use a rasp to shape the handle and I finish it off with some sandpaper. The final thing I add is a mix of pine tar, linseed oil and turpentine, mixed 1/3 each. It gives the handle a nice look and it smells incredible.
Thank you so much for watching the video, I really hope you enjoyed it. So in today's video we made this folded axe. Actually, I made two. I accidentally forgot to film some of the steps when I made this one, so I remade everything and made this one. And I'm also giving it away, so subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. I will pick one out at random that will receive this axe. Also check the pinned comment, all the information about when the giveaway ends will be there, and I will also update that comment when the winner has been announced. So, folded axe, a very fun way to forge axes. It's actually how I started out forging all of my axes because I didn't have the tools to punch the eye. And this way you can do it without those tools. You can do this in different ways. I personally like to focus on this section first when I'm folding and welding, and then insert the steel. Some people do all of it at the same time, but I would argue that this method is safer because you can focus on this section first and then move over to the other one. You can also start out with just a bar of steel instead of an axe billet, which is probably easier to come by. And I've even seen people make them out of files and rasps, so what are you waiting for, right? I hope that it was somewhat educational for you, at least it was for me. I would also like to take a moment to thank NORDFORGE, who chose to send me a new forge to try out. Now, we have been working together for I think 2.5 years or something, and we've become great friends since then. I really like the new forge. It's smaller than my old one. That means it's way more gas efficient and it can weld, no problem. It's safe and it's, in my opinion, it looks pretty cool as well. I really like it. So if you want to check it out, you can find the link in the description. And if you decide to reach out to them, please say hi from me. That would be fun. I would also like to take a moment to thank everyone who chose to support what I do here, either via Patreon or YouTube membership. You guys help me produce these videos for everyone to see. Thank you so much. And as a special thank you, since I happen to make 2 axes in this run, I'm going to give away this one for one of you guys. So expect a message soon. If you would like to support my YouTube channel and what I do here, producing these videos, you can find the links to Patreon and YouTube membership down in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys. See you in the next video. Goodbye.